Over the past few decades, filmmakers and showrunners have explored post-apocalyptic worlds in just about every way imaginable. Stories where some massive disaster wipes out most of humanity or turns people into strange and usually dangerous creatures. But among all these different takes on the genre, there's one movie that stands out: I Am Legend. A fan favorite and for many, one of the best films in this genre. Will Smith's unforgettable performance left a real mark, especially in those final moments where his character sacrifices himself to save humanity. But believe it or not, there's an alternate ending to this film, one you've probably never seen, and it changes everything. It flips the meaning of the story entirely and even swaps the roles of hero and monster. That's exactly what we're diving into in this video, so stick with CutClub as we uncover the ending you didn't get to see. From the beginning, when it was announced that I Am Legend would be adapted from Richard Matheson's classic novel, fans expected a faithful and powerful retelling. It wasn't the first time the book had been adapted. There were two previous versions: The Last Man on Earth in 1964 and The Omega Man in 1971. Each of those had their own charm and strengths, but neither of them fully captured the deep despair, crushing loneliness, and philosophical layers that the novel was built on. That's where I Am Legend, 2007, directed by Francis Lawrence, came closer to the mark. From Will Smith's haunting portrayal of a broken scientist, isolated, grieving, and on the edge of mental collapse, to the eerie, empty, decaying version of New York City they created, everything worked together to build a believable, terrifying world that felt truly post-apocalyptic. But still, the movie wasn't without its flaws. One of the biggest issues: the Dark Seekers, the infected, vampiric mutants. These creatures were heavily CGI-based, which clashed with the otherwise gritty, realistic tone of the movie. The reason for that? Well, it turns out Francis Lawrence wasn't sure how he wanted to bring these creatures to life, not until very late in production. He went back and forth between practical makeup and digital effects, and after several makeup tests, he finally landed on CGI, almost as a last-minute call. The result? Dark Seekers that looked off. Not scary enough, not believable. And that really hurt their presence on screen. But the visuals of the Dark Seekers were only half the problem. The bigger issue was how they were portrayed in the story. In the theatrical cut, these creatures are shown as mindless, violent, soulless beasts. Basically, monsters, nothing more. But that's not how they are in Matheson's novel. Especially not when it comes to the ending. In the film's released version, we see Neville finally crack the code. He discovers a cure. But right at that moment, the Dark Seekers track down his lab and break in. As chaos breaks out, Neville hands a vial of the cure to Anna and the young boy she's protecting, telling them to escape. Then comes the scene with the Alpha Darkseeker, violently slamming his body against the glass over and over until a butterfly-shaped crack forms on the surface. That image triggers a memory of Neville's daughter, who once told him, "Look for the butterflies." Inspired, and maybe finding a last bit of meaning, Neville sacrifices himself with a grenade, killing the Darkseekers to let Anna and the boy get away. The final monologue turns him into a kind of tragic, heroic legend. But here's the thing. Matheson's novel wasn't just about survival. It was about something much deeper: how myths are born, how fear can shape morality, and how the idea of a monster depends on who's telling the story. And thankfully, the movie originally had a completely different ending. The intended ending, the one that stayed truer to the spirit of the book. In this alternate ending, everything plays out the same, up to the moment the glass starts to crack in the shape of a butterfly. But this time, Neville suddenly understands what the Alpha Darkseeker is really trying to do. The creature stops for a second and gently places his hand on the glass, drawing the outline of a butterfly. That's when Neville notices something he hadn't seen before. The female Darkseeker he'd been experimenting on has a butterfly tattoo. And then it hits him. This isn't a mindless attack. The Alpha isn't here to kill him. He's trying to rescue someone he cares about. Neville opens the door. He returns the female Darkseeker to the Alpha, who gently embraces her. And without harming Neville, Anna, or the boy, they leave. Just like that. And then comes the most powerful moment in the film. Neville turns to his wall of test subjects. The countless infected creatures he's captured and experimented on, dissected and observed. One after another, he stares at what he's done. And it finally clicks. He's the monster. To them, he's been the nightmare. A killer who snatches their people in the dark and tortures them in the name of science. That moment completely flips the narrative. The story stops being about a lone hero fighting beasts and becomes about a new society trying to survive while being hunted by what they see as the real threat. That's what made the original ending so powerful. It didn't just deliver a twist, it completely redefined who the story was really about. Suddenly, the disease wasn't the real danger. It was about perspective, about misunderstanding, about how easy it is to become a villain in someone else's story, without even realizing it. And this ending, unlike the theatrical version, asks much bigger, deeper questions. Is a hero still a hero if the people he's saving don't see him that way? Is a monster always defined by what they look like? Or by what they feel? What they love? This version of I Am Legend doesn't end with a sacrifice and a speech about humanity. It ends with recognition, with empathy, with a shift in our understanding of everything that came before. So, why was it cut? Simple. Test audiences didn't like it. They weren't ready for a philosophical ending where the hero isn't really the hero and the monsters aren't really monsters. It challenged their expectations, and that made the studio nervous. So, in the end, they went with the safer, more traditional, Hollywood-style conclusion. A clean sacrifice, a noble death, a clear villain, a clear hero. But here's the twist in real life. Now, years later, a sequel is in development, and they've confirmed it'll follow this alternate ending, not the theatrical one. That's almost unheard of in Hollywood. Despite the original movie's commercial success, the filmmakers are choosing to go back to the riskier, deeper, more faithful direction. They're finally embracing the heart of Matheson's novel, the philosophy, the ambiguity, the moral questions. And that leaves us with one big question. If you had the choice, which ending would you prefer? The one where a tragic hero goes out in a blaze of glory? Or the one that makes you rethink everything and realize that sometimes the scariest monster in the story might actually be you?